cheating billionaire sells house and kicks out pregnant wife, CEO, comes to her rescue. The sweltering summer sun cast its harsh rays on the pristine driveway, but the heat outside was nothing compared to the fire raging within Rebecca West's heart. Mere months ago, her world had sparkled with the promise of a fairy tale future, married to the charming millionaire Andrew West, pregnant with their first child, and living in a luxurious estate that most would only see in magazines. But a single phone call had shattered her illusions, unveiling secrets she never imagined. And now, on the brink of losing everything, help arrives from the most unexpected source. Nicholas Walker, a powerful and enigmatic CEO poised to rescue her broken heart. Rebecca West had grown up in the small town of Lilac Grove, where dusty roads led to one-story houses, and the biggest excitement each year was the county fair. She was raised with modest means by her mother, Margaret, who worked at the local bakery, and her father, Jonathan, a mechanic who taught Rebecca the value of honesty and hard work. From an early age, she dreamt of escaping the small-town life, envisioning tall skyscrapers, luxurious ball gowns, and the swirl of city lights around her. But she never expected to cross paths with a man like Andrew West, a rising business magnate who seemingly fell from the heavens into her life. They met at a charity gala in the heart of downtown Riverdale City. Rebecca attended on a friend's pass, an unexpected last-minute invitation from her old high school buddy, Miranda, who had become a successful public relations specialist. Rebecca felt out of place among the glittering crowd in expensive designer attire, while she wore a modest navy dress from a discount rack. Yet there was something about her unassuming grace and natural kindness that captured Andrew West's eye. The moment he walked into the room, he was tall, handsome, and confident in a perfectly fitted tuxedo. At 29, he was already known in the business world for his sharp mind and relentless ambition, having inherited a small real estate venture from his father and expanding it into a multi-million-dollar empire. Despite his wealth, he exuded a friendly charm that put everyone at ease. When he approached Rebecca at the appetizer table, she felt her heart flutter nervously. They spent that evening talking about everything from art to travel, and Andrew listened intently to her stories about Lilac Grove. Where other wealthy guests might have looked down on her humble origins, Andrew appeared captivated. By the end of the night, he asked for her number, promising to call soon. He wasn't lying. Rebecca discovered he was persistent, calling and texting every day. Flowers arrived at her doorstep, and weekend getaways became frequent. Before she had time to catch her breath, Andrew West had swept her off her feet. A year later, they married in a lavish ceremony held at the Grand Rose Hotel, overlooking a serene lake. It was a wedding right out of a fairy tale, chandeliers glittering like diamonds, an aisle strewn with white rose petals, and a string quartet playing softly as Rebecca walked toward Andrew with tears in her eyes. Their vows spoke of eternal love, partnership, and devotion. In that blissful moment, Rebecca believed her life had aligned perfectly, as though the universe had granted her every wish. But even as she basked in the glow of her new life, there were subtle cracks she couldn't name, small warning signs. She noticed Andrew was prone to mood swings. His phone seemed to ring at odd hours, and once in a while, he would disappear for entire weekends, claiming business emergencies. Yet, every time doubt crept into Rebecca's mind, Andrew would appear with a bouquet of pink peonies, her favorite flowers, and a reassuring smile. For the next 2 years, it was easy to overlook these inconsistencies. After all, Andrew's business soared. Their new mansion, Westview Estate, became the envy of neighbors, and Rebecca discovered she was pregnant with their first child. That day, Andrew scooped her up in his arms, spinning her around until she shrieked with laughter. She believed that moment of unbridled joy was the first step toward a perfect life. Little did she know, it was also the calm before the storm. As the months rolled by, the glow of pregnancy gave Rebecca a new sense of purpose. She spent her days preparing the nursery, flipping through parenting books, and feeling the first flutter of life inside her belly. She often caught Andrew gazing at her, eyes filled with an emotion that teetered between awe and something more complex, something that felt almost like regret. One afternoon, Rebecca decided to surprise Andrew by bringing him lunch at his downtown office. She prepared a homemade meal he loved, rosemary chicken with roasted vegetables, and carefully packed it in a casserole dish. The glass windows of West Real Estate Holdings headquarters shone under the sun, seeming to reflect the power and prestige Andrew's name had built. When Rebecca entered the reception area, the staff recognized her instantly, smiling and greeting her with warmth. "Mr. West is in a meeting, Miss S. West. Shall I let him know you're here?" Andrew's assistant, Lydia Perkins, asked politely. Rebecca nodded. "It's just a surprise visit." "I won't bother him if he's busy." The assistant disappeared behind the ornate wooden doors. Moments later, she returned, looking slightly flustered. "He says he's finishing up and will be right with you. Would you like something to drink while you wait?" "Just water, please," Rebecca replied. Sitting in the plush waiting area, Rebecca couldn't help but scan the array of magazines on the glass table. There were real estate trade journals with Andrew's face on the cover, articles praising him for his business acumen. As she flipped through a glossy spread, she overheard a hushed argument on the other side of the wall, through a slight crack in the door. She recognized Andrew's voice, low and urgent, but she couldn't make out the exact words. Another voice, a woman's, responded just as sharply. Through the mumbled conversation, Rebecca caught her own name once, perhaps twice, as well as a phrase that sounded suspiciously like, "Don't let her find out." Her heart sank. Then the voices stopped. Moments later, Andrew emerged with a tense smile. "Becca, hey," he greeted, walking toward her in long, purposeful strides. "I didn't know you were coming by." She forced a bright smile, trying to quell the flutter of apprehension in her stomach. "I thought I'd bring you lunch. You've been so busy, and I wanted to do something nice." Andrew kissed her cheek, the warmth of his lips reassuring yet slightly rushed. "That's so thoughtful, honey. Thank you." He took the casserole dish from her hands as if it weighed a ton. "Let me walk you to my office." Inside his spacious corner suite, Rebecca noticed something odd. A faint trace of perfume, not hers, lingered in the air. She glanced around, seeing no one, but the plush leather couch cushions looked recently disturbed. She tried to dismiss the worry, reminding herself that staff, clients, and business associates came and went all the time. Yet, doubt crept through her veins like an icy chill. They shared an awkward lunch. Andrew talked about meetings, upcoming deals, and expansion plans, his voice too loud and too animated. Rebecca watched him closely, trying to catch any inconsistency in his words, but he was careful. Still, he never quite met her eyes. Days turned into weeks, and Rebecca grew more aware of Andrew's late-night texts, secretive phone calls, and an increasing distance between them. Sometimes she'd find him standing by the window, staring into the city lights, lost in thought. Other times, he would come home at 3 in the morning, claiming he had business calls in different time zones. If she dared to question him, his face would darken with a defensive anger she'd never seen before. Her own motherly instinct told her something was amiss. She tried to quell her fears by focusing on the baby, but worry gnawed at her relentlessly. One day, while sorting baby clothes in the immaculate walk-in closet, she found a receipt for a diamond necklace from an upscale boutique, dated just 2 days prior. Her heart soared. Maybe it was a surprise gift for her. But as she dug deeper, She found a smaller slip of paper with a scribbled note. "Meet me at the Lakeview Hotel, Suite 304. Her vision blurred with tears. The date on the note was today. That evening, Andrew claimed to have a late meeting again, delivering the same stale excuses about potential investors flying in from Hong Kong. Rebecca's heart pounded relentlessly as she forced a neutral expression. She already knew the note in his pocket told a different story. After Andrew left, she carefully tucked her swelling belly into a loose coat. Fearing confrontation, but driven by an instinctive need for truth, she took a cab to Lakeview Hotel. Her mind spun with worst-case scenarios. Perhaps Andrew was having an affair, or maybe he was dealing with shady business deals. Neither possibility comforted her. Lakeview Hotel was a 5-star property, the kind of place where the well-to-do enjoyed lavish weekend getaways and discreet encounters behind gilded doors. The marbled lobby smelled of fresh orchids and bergamot. Rebecca's nerves were raw, her steps tentative on the gleaming floor. She took the elevator to the 3rd floor, dread clogging her throat. The hallway stretched endlessly before her. Suite 304 was near the end, beneath a sconce that bathed the plush carpet in soft golden light. She paused, trembling. Every fibre of her being wanted to turn back, to remain blissfully ignorant. But the image of that receipt for a diamond necklace pricked her heart, fueling a courage she hadn't known she possessed. Slowly she lifted her hand and knocked. After a few seconds, the door opened slightly. A woman stood there, tall, elegant, and undeniably beautiful. Her silky black hair cascaded over her shoulders, and she wore a form-fitting, expensive-looking dress. Confusion and alarm flickered in her eyes. "Who are you?" the woman asked, voice wavering. Rebecca cleared her throat, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I'm Andrew West's wife." "Is he here?" A flicker of guilt crossed the woman's face. Then came Andrew, his features twisting into a mask of horror when he saw Rebecca at the threshold. "Rebecca? What are you doing here?" Rebecca's blood ran cold. The scene in front of her confirmed every suspicion that had haunted her. She felt the baby shift in her womb, as though the child sensed the searing tension. "Is this?" she stammered, blinking back tears. "Is she?" Andrew ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting between Rebecca and the unknown woman. "I can explain," he managed, though his voice lacked conviction. The woman bit her lip, stepping back into the suite, giving Andrew space to slip into the hallway. The corridor felt suffocating, the walls closing in on them. "I told you not to come here," he hissed to the woman, before turning back to Rebecca. "Look, let's talk about this at home. This isn't what it looks like." Rebecca's heart ached, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. "It looks like you're having an affair," she said quietly. "Is that the truth?" Andrew's silence was louder than any confession. He tried to grasp her hand, but she pulled away. The reality of betrayal roared in her mind, overshadowing any rational thought. She turned away, feeling her entire body quake with heartbreak, anger, and a wrenching sense of loss. "Rebecca, wait!" Andrew called after her. But she ignored him, pressing the elevator button repeatedly. She caught a glimpse of the other woman in the doorway, arms folded as if she were simply inconvenienced by this unexpected wife. The final blow to Rebecca's heart was Andrew's hesitant stance, caught between chasing his pregnant wife and remaining in the arms of his mistress. The elevator doors parted, and Rebecca stepped inside. She watched Andrew's face contort with indecision, but he didn't move. As the doors sealed shut, she felt her world collapsing. Every promise of everlasting love, every vow, every happy dream of the future slipped through her fingers like sand, leaving only a haunting emptiness behind. After discovering Andrew's affair, Rebecca fell into a numb haze. She barely ate, rarely slept, and often stared aimlessly out the window of Westview Estate, seeing only the flickering fragments of her broken dreams. Andrew tried to do damage control, feeding her halting explanations about business stress and a so-called temporary lapse in judgment. But the truth was undeniable. He had betrayed her trust, and there was another woman in his life. Despite his attempts at reconciliation, he remained evasive, slipping out at odd hours and dodging her questions with ease. Weeks stretched on, and her pregnancy advanced, but she felt more alone than ever. To make matters worse, she began to sense a growing tension in the household staff whispers that stopped the moment she entered a room, worried glances cast in her direction. One evening, a moving van rumbled into the driveway unannounced. At first, Rebecca thought it was a surprise furniture delivery for the nursery. Curious, she stepped outside into the crisp air, only to see two men loading paintings and boxes from the garage into the truck. "Excuse me," she called, her voice laced with alarm. "What's going on here?" One of the movers glanced at her, unsure. "We're just following Mr. West's instructions, ma'am." "This stuff is going into storage." She frowned, confusion swirling. "What storage?" "Nobody told me we were clearing out the house." Andrew appeared from around the corner, wearing a strained expression. "Becca, I've been meaning to tell you. We're downsizing some of the property to free up assets." Her stomach twisted. "Free up assets? We have more than enough, Andrew. What are you really doing?" He looked away, sighing. "I'm selling Westview Estate." The words hit her like a physical blow. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the baby move within, as though responding to her sudden turmoil. "What do you mean you're selling it? This is our home." Andrew's eyes flickered with guilt, but there was also an unmistakable resolve. "I made an offer, and it was accepted. The paperwork is almost finalized." Tears blurred her vision. "You never even talked to me about this." "Where are we going to live? This is our child's home too." He stepped closer, but she backed away. "Look, I know it's sudden, but trust me, it's for the best. Things are complicated right now, and I need the liquidity. I have a lot of investments that are risky. I have to protect our future." But his words rang hollow. She could see it was more than business. There was a desperation in his voice that suggested hidden debts, possibly connected to his illicit affairs or reckless spending. Perhaps he was already funneling money somewhere else, somewhere she wasn't supposed to look. That evening, the mansion felt like a hollow shell. Rebecca moved through the emptying rooms, each one stripped of memories and warmth. Silently, she ran her hand along the walls where she'd once hung their wedding photos. Now, bare nails jutted from the plaster. It was as if every trace of their life together was being erased. When the final piece of furniture was carried out, Andrew dropped another bombshell. "You'll need to find somewhere else to stay," he said brusquely. "The new owners will be moving in soon. It's better if you go back to Lilac Grove for a while." She stared at him in disbelief. "You're kicking me out? Now, when I'm 7 months pregnant?" He avoided her gaze. "It's not like that. But we both need space." Rebecca's voice broke. "Space? We're married. This is our child." Andrew's expression hardened. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The house is gone. And I need you out of my hair while I sort things out. You'll be taken care of financially." The finality in his tone crushed her. Devastated and betrayed, Rebecca realized in that moment that the man she married no longer existed. In his place stood a stranger who valued money, secrets, and shallow comforts over his wife and unborn child. Rain battered the windows of the nearly vacant mansion as Rebecca hurried to pack her belongings into an overnight bag. She had no energy for anything else, her hands shaking with a blend of rage and heartbreak. Andrew claimed he'd booked her a room at a small hotel near the outskirts of the city until she could figure out a more long-term solution. The indifference in his voice replayed in her mind, echoing with a brutal finality. Through the storm, a taxi eventually arrived, its headlights carving through the darkness. Rebecca stood at the threshold, belly heavy with new life, heart heavy with sorrow. She turned back for one last look at the place she had called home, yet all she saw were shadows and memories too painful to relive. Without another word, she stepped into the cab, feeling more alone than ever. The hotel Andrew arranged was far from glamorous. The chipped paint on the outside walls and flickering neon sign read Skyline Inn, a place teetering on the edge of disrepair. Inside, the reception area smelled faintly of mildew, with worn carpet that had seen better decades. The receptionist greeted her with mild disinterest, handing over a key to a room on the second floor. Rebecca's mind was clouded by a swirl of thoughts. She could phone her parents in Lilac Grove, but they had enough financial struggles and health issues of their own. She didn't want to burden them. Miranda, her friend, had moved across the country, and how could Rebecca ask for help from others when her own millionaire husband had just cast her aside? The tiny hotel room had a single bed, a wobbly dresser, and a small TV bolted to the wall. The flickering overhead light made the space feel even more oppressive. Collapsing onto the bed, she let the tears come. Hot, bitter tears that refused to stop. Tears for the broken promises, the betrayal, and the terror of facing motherhood alone. Hours turned into days, and still she received no call from Andrew. The phone would ring occasionally, with a concerned voice from the mansion staff checking in, but they clearly had orders not to intervene beyond superficial niceties. Worse yet, Rebecca discovered the credit card Andrew had given her was suddenly declined. She was left with only a small emergency fund in her personal savings, a fraction of what she needed to sustain herself for long. Anxiety gnawed at her. She tried to call Andrew directly, but he rarely picked up, and when he did, his tone was cold, hurried, always making excuses to cut the conversation short. She realized with a hollow ache that their marriage was effectively over. One night, as she paced the confines of the cramped room, she felt an intense pressure in her abdomen. Panic set in. What if there were complications? 7 months along, the baby was viable, but every day carried new risks. She clung to her phone, scanning her limited contacts, feeling more terrified than ever that she might face an emergency alone. In a desperate moment, she decided she had to find a job, some way to support herself. Even if it meant returning to Lilac Grove, she would no longer rely on Andrew's whims. Determined, she dried her tears, flicked on the TV for some background noise, and opened her laptop. She began scouring job postings, resolute in her new mission. That's when she stumbled across an online ad for an administrative position at a firm called Walker Global Innovations. The position promised competitive pay, excellent benefits, and most importantly, a welcoming environment. It felt like fate dangling a slim lifeline in front of her. Her fingers trembled over the keyboard as she submitted her resume, heart pounding at the thought of stepping into the unknown. It was better than her current nightmare. Little did she know, that single click would alter the course of her life forever, setting off a chain of events that would pit her against Andrew's treachery in ways she could never have anticipated. Weeks later, Rebecca found herself standing nervously in the sleek, modern lobby of Walker Global Innovations. Polished floors gleamed underfoot, and towering glass walls offered a view of the city's skyline. Bathed in the morning sun, she clutched her small leather portfolio, hoping to impress the hiring manager with more than just her limited administrative experience. She needed this job badly, not just for income, but to restore her shattered sense of self-worth. The receptionist guided her to a conference room. As she waited, she smoothed her professional yet forgiving dress over her pregnant belly, determined not to let potential employers see her as a liability. She rehearsed her talking points in her mind. She had assisted Andrew in managing some of his finances, though she would never mention his name, not now, and had experience coordinating events for charity. She could handle spreadsheets, scheduling, and anything else they threw at her. This job was her chance to build a new life. A tall, middle-aged woman stepped in, smiling warmly. "Rebecca West?" "Yes, that's me," Rebecca replied, rising to shake her hand. "I'm Angela Rivers, Head of Human Resources. Welcome to Walker Global Innovations. Please have a seat." The interview began as standard fare, discussing her background, skill sets, and future aspirations. But halfway through, Angela suddenly glanced at the time on her phone and apologized. "Mr. Walker wants to meet you personally," she explained, eyes lighting up with a mixture of respect and nerves. "He takes a direct interest in new hires for certain positions, especially those he feels might fit well in his executive circle." Rebecca's heart fluttered. Nicholas Walker was legendary in the business world, a self-made millionaire whose philanthropic efforts were equally impressive. In her mind, he was an untouchable figure, someone she'd only ever seen in news articles and at the periphery of high society events. Anxiety and excitement warred inside her. Moments later, Nicholas Walker himself entered the room. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried an air of calm authority. There was an energy about him that seemed to fill the space, yet his gaze was gentle, assessing her kindly. "Miss West," he greeted, extending a hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Angela mentioned you have a strong background in administrative support and event coordination." Rebecca fought the urge to fidget. She reminded herself to appear confident. "Yes, I've worked on several high-profile charity events in the past," she explained. She left out the fact that most of her exposure had been through Andrew's circle. Nicholas nodded. "Impressive. Tell me, what do you believe sets you apart from other candidates?" She swallowed, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm resourceful and resilient," she said, choosing her words carefully. "1. I've faced a lot of personal challenges recently, and I had to learn how to adapt quickly. I believe that mindset can be an asset to any team, especially when time is short and stakes are high." Nicholas studied her for a long moment, and she worried she had revealed too much. But then he smiled, a genuine, understanding expression. "That's a very honest answer. And I appreciate honesty above all else. We're in a fast-paced environment here. People who can think on their feet and persist through adversity often do well in my company." He asked a few more questions, drilling down on her organization methods, her comfort with technology, and how she handled conflict. Each time, Rebecca answered as best she could, fueled by a determination born from desperation. The interview concluded on a positive note, and Nicholas thanked her for her time. Angela walked her out, explaining that decisions would be made by the end of the week. Rebecca thanked her graciously, left the building, and exhaled a shaky breath. She had never felt so nervous yet oddly hopeful. Something about Nicholas Walker's presence reassured her, as though he saw more than just a pregnant woman in over her head. True to their word, Walker Global Innovations called Rebecca 2 days later, offering her a position as an administrative assistant with possibilities for future growth. Relief flooded her. She said yes without hesitation. Unknown to her at the time, this job would do more than pay the bills. It would open doors to new connections, new hopes, and the possibility of a future that didn't revolve around Andrew's betrayal. Rebecca's first day at Walker Global Innovations was a whirlwind of introductions, onboarding paperwork, and learning company protocols. She was assigned to the 12th floor, a sleek environment where various departmental heads and executives worked collaboratively under Nicholas Walker's leadership. Her immediate supervisor, Caroline Fisher, was a poised and direct operations manager who welcomed her warmly. Despite the flurry of deadlines, "You'll be helping me organize executive meetings, manage Mr. Walker's schedule when needed, and coordinate with outside vendors for charity events," Caroline explained, showing her to a tidy cubicle with a panoramic view of the city. "Any questions? Don't hesitate to ask," Rebecca nodded, trying to contain her excitement. She carefully arranged a framed ultrasound picture on her desk, her reminder that no matter how chaotic things got, her child was the guiding star of her life now. She couldn't afford to fail. The day passed quickly in a blur of spreadsheets, phone calls, and scheduling software tutorials. By late afternoon, Caroline mentioned that Nicholas Walker wanted a brief update on upcoming charitable initiatives. "He's in the middle of a conference call," she said, handing Rebecca a file. "But once he's done, go in and give him a summary." Rebecca swallowed hard. She had never imagined she'd interact with the CEO again so soon, and her nerves spiked at the thought. Nevertheless, she took a deep breath, clutched the file, and waited patiently outside Nicholas's office. When the door finally opened, a harried-looking executive walked out, giving her a polite nod. Inside, Nicholas sat at a large mahogany desk that contrasted with the modern aesthetic of the rest of the floor. The office itself was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a single piece of abstract art adorning the wall. He motioned for her to enter with a genial smile. "Miss West, come in. How's your first day going?" His voice was calm, though she sensed the undercurrent of a busy schedule. She stepped forward, heart thrumming. "Good, Mr. Walker. I'm still getting the hang of everything, but Caroline has been very helpful. That's what I like to hear. Now, what updates do you have for me?" She handed him the file, summarizing the details about an upcoming fundraiser for children's literacy. As she spoke, he asked pointed questions, zeroing in on budget allocations and projected attendance. Despite her nervousness, she found herself answering with confidence thanks to her past experience coordinating events in Andrew's social circle. Nicholas leaned back in his chair, studying her as she finished. "Well done, Miss West. You're thorough." He paused, then added, "I know it can be daunting to jump into a new environment, especially when you're expecting a child. Let's ensure you have the support you need." Heat rose to her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. Walker. I appreciate that." For a moment, his gaze lingered on her, a flicker of compassion in his eyes. Then he nodded, returning to a stack of documents on his desk. "Keep up the good work. If you need anything, my door is open." She left the office with a sense of triumph, tempered by relief. As she settled back at her cubicle, she couldn't help reflecting on how different Nicholas Walker was from Andrew. Where Andrew was brash and often dismissive of others, Nicholas projected a quiet confidence and genuine concern for his employees' well-being. Over the next few weeks, she found her workload steadily increasing, and surprisingly, she thrived on the challenge. She streamlined email communication, organized more efficient filing systems, and even helped Caroline craft a detailed timeline for an upcoming gala event. Occasionally, Nicholas would stop by her desk to ask a quick question or request a document, and each interaction left her more at ease in his presence. Despite her progress at work, Rebecca's personal life remained fraught. Andrew occasionally texted, mostly with terse demands about signing certain documents related to the sale of the house. He never asked about her health or the baby. Each time she glanced at her phone and saw his name, a bitter ache returned. But she refused to let his neglect define her future. Little by little, day by day, she was forging a new path. She was alone, but no longer helpless. And, in the quiet corners of her mind, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could build a life for herself and her child without Andrew's name overshadowing them at every turn. While Rebecca embraced her new start, Andrew West found himself grappling with mounting problems. The real estate market had taken a downturn. Several of his high-profile projects teetered on the edge of bankruptcy, and rumors swirled that he had funneled corporate funds into personal ventures, including lavish gifts for his mistress, Antonia. Worse yet, The sale of Westview Estate hadn't yielded the financial security Andrew had hoped for. It merely provided a temporary stopgap. Late one night, as Andrew paced his penthouse in the city, one he'd secretly rented for his rendezvous with Antonia, he scrolled through emails that confirmed what he feared. His company's liquidity was dangerously low. Investors were pulling out, uneasy about whispers of scandal and mismanagement. Even the staff sensed trouble. Some had already begun to look for work elsewhere, anticipating the worst. Meanwhile, Antonia lounged on a plush sofa, swirling a glass of red wine. She flicked her gaze over Andrew with a bored expression. "You look stressed," she said, arching an eyebrow. "I thought selling that house was supposed to solve all our problems." Andrew shot her a withering look. "Some of them, not all. Besides, I have bigger concerns right now." He sank into a leather armchair, running a hand through his hair. Despite his frustration, he was still seduced by Antonia's beauty. He told himself their relationship had begun purely for excitement, a release from his dull marriage. But now he was left with a pregnant wife, a collapsing empire, and a mistress who seemed to care more about the next lavish trip than the ruinous state of his finances. "You're not going to get my sympathy if that's what you're fishing for," Antonia said, taking another sip of wine. "You promised me a lifestyle, Andrew. You said you had everything under control. If that's changed, maybe I should make other arrangements." His eyes narrowed. "Don't you dare threaten me. I've done everything for you. When things stabilize, we'll be back on track. Just be patient." Antonia shrugged dismissively. "I'm just saying, I'm not interested in watching your downfall if there's nothing in it for me." Andrew stood abruptly, fists clenched. He'd never felt so cornered. Staring at Antonia, he realized that perhaps she'd been right all along. This was no grand romance, just a mutually beneficial arrangement that had run its course. The problem was he had burned nearly all his bridges for her. Rebecca, who once would have supported him through any crisis, was out of the picture, rightly so, and the staff he'd once commanded with absolute authority now doubted his ability to lead. Tossing his phone onto the coffee table, Andrew strode toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city lights. He felt trapped in a gilded cage of his own making. In a rare moment of self-awareness, he wondered if kicking out Rebecca had been the worst mistake of his life. Swallowing the thought, he told himself it was too late to turn back. He had one last strategy in mind, a risky partnership with a foreign conglomerate that specialized in distressed real estate assets. If he could broker a deal, it might save his company from bankruptcy. If he failed, he'd lose everything: reputation, fortune, and even Antonia's empty affections. Yet the spectre of Rebecca's eyes, brimming with hurt, haunted him. Despite his attempts to bury the guilt, a sliver of remorse gnawed at him. He pushed the thought away, focusing on the storm brewing outside. Thunder rumbled in the distance, mirroring the turmoil within his heart. He was Andrew West, after all. He could bend the world to his will, or so he still believed. Morning light streamed into Rebecca's cramped hotel room. She stretched carefully, acutely aware of her swollen belly and the twinges of discomfort that came with approaching her 8th month. Despite the uncertainty of her living situation, she felt a growing sense of empowerment from her job. Every day at Walker Global Innovations reminded her that she was capable and valuable. On that particular morning, the ring of her cell phone startled her. She checked the screen. Margaret, West Lilac Grove, her mother. A wave of relief washed over her as she answered. "Mom, is everything okay?" Her mother's voice was choked with emotion. "Rebecca, your father's condition is getting worse. The doctors say his heart isn't responding well to treatment. I don't want to burden you, but we need help." Rebecca's chest constricted. She closed her eyes, tears burning behind her lids. Her father, Jonathan, had battled heart problems for years, but she hadn't realized his health had deteriorated so rapidly. She and Andrew, back when they were united, had paid for some of the medical bills. Now, she had only her modest new income. She pressed a hand to her forehead, trying to steady herself. I can come. But I don't have a place to stay in Lilac Grove right now. The line crackled with static before her mother responded, We'll figure it out together. Just come if you can. Ending the call, Rebecca felt torn. She had her job, her lifeline, but her father needed her. She told herself that she'd explain her situation to Caroline or even to Nicholas directly. Perhaps she could arrange for remote work or a leave of absence. She wouldn't abandon her parents when they needed her most. After dressing, she headed to the office. The bus ride was unusually slow, each stop feeling like an eternity. Once inside the building, she spotted Caroline rushing through the foyer. Gathering her courage, Rebecca hurried to catch up, explaining the family emergency. Caroline's eyes softened with compassion. I'm so sorry to hear that, Rebecca. If you need time off, we'll work something out. I'll talk to Mr. Walker. He's very understanding with family emergencies. Grateful, Rebecca nodded. Thank you. I don't want to lose this job, but my father... Say no more, Caroline interrupted kindly. I'll set a meeting with Mr. Walker after lunch. Let's see what we can arrange. All morning, Rebecca tried to focus on tasks, but her thoughts drifted to her father's weary smile, her mother's anxious calls, and the baby swirling inside her womb. She worried about traveling in her condition, but she had no choice. Family came first. Finally, Caroline beckoned her to Nicholas Walker's office. Stepping inside, Rebecca felt that same calm reassurance from his presence. He sat behind his desk, scanning a proposal, but looked up and gestured for her to sit. Caroline tells me you have a family emergency, he said gently. Rebecca explained her father's worsening condition, her voice trembling. I need to go to Lilac Grove, at least for a short time. I'm not sure how to manage that with my responsibilities here. Nicholas listened intently, tapping a pen against the desk. I'm sorry about your father. Of course, family is paramount. We can arrange for you to work remotely as much as possible, or if you need an official leave, we'll work out the details. Your position will remain secure. Gratitude nearly overwhelmed her. She had expected to grovel, to possibly lose her job. Thank you, Mr. Walker. I can't tell you how much this means to me. He nodded, concern etched on his features. Do you have a safe way to travel? You're quite far along in your pregnancy. She placed a protective hand over her belly. I'll take the train. It's a few hours, but I'll be careful. Nicholas exchanged a glance with Caroline. We have a corporate jet making a short trip tomorrow for an unrelated business matter. If it's not too intrusive, we could arrange for you to fly to a regional airport near Lilac Grove. It would be faster and more comfortable. Rebecca's eyes widened. The offer was generous beyond anything she'd expected. That would be incredible. I just don't want to impose. Nicholas offered a comforting smile. Nonsense. We take care of our own here. Let's finalize the details, and you focus on your family. She thanked him profusely, her heart swelling with unexpected relief. The echo of Andrew's dismissive remarks rang in her ears, reminding her how stark the contrast was between her soon-to-be ex-husband's selfishness and Nicholas's kindness. And so a plan was set. She would take a few personal days, possibly more, to be with her father. Little did she know that this journey would not only force her to confront her past, but also pull Nicholas Walker further into the tangled web of her life, a path neither of them saw coming. The sleek, small corporate jet touched down at a regional airstrip just outside Lilac Grove. Rebecca gingerly stepped onto the tarmac, clutching a small carry-on. She was greeted by a driver Nicholas had arranged, holding a sign with her name. Though the gesture was meant to ease her burden, she felt a pang of guilt at the expense. Still, she reminded herself that Nicholas had insisted, As they drove the winding roads toward her parents' modest house, memories rushed back, the wildflowers she used to pick in summer, the backyard where her father taught her to ride a bike, the smell of baking bread from her mother's kitchen. The driver pulled up to a faded white bungalow with a sagging porch, the paint peeling around the edges. Rebecca's throat constricted, seeing the signs of her parents' financial struggles so starkly. Her mother, Margaret, stood on the porch steps, worry carving lines into her once smooth face. She hurried to hug Rebecca, eyeing her pregnant belly. "My baby," she whispered tearfully, cupping Rebecca's cheeks. "It's so good to see you." Tears burned in Rebecca's eyes as she returned the embrace. "How's Dad?" Margaret's gaze dropped. "He's inside. We got him home from the hospital because he hates staying there, but the doctors say we need to be prepared. His heart is just too weak." Dread weighed heavily on Rebecca, but she forced herself to be strong. She followed her mother inside to a small living room where her father lay propped on a recliner, oxygen tubes running to his nose. At the sight of Rebecca, a faint smile lit his weary face. "Becca!" he rasped, holding out a trembling hand. She rushed to him, tears falling freely. She spent the afternoon by his side, sharing gentle updates about her life in the city, omitting the more painful details about Andrew's betrayal. Despite his weakened condition, her father's eyes flickered with pride when she told him about her job at Walker Global Innovations. "That's my girl," he said, voice cracking. "Always knew you'd find a way." As evening approached, a neighbor brought a casserole, and Margaret served it with quiet gratitude. Rebecca helped where she could, but her pregnancy limited her stamina. Exhausted, she lay down on the worn sofa in the living room, lulled to sleep by the comforting hum of the old floor fan. She awoke hours later to the soft sound of her parents talking in hushed voices. Jonathan's labored breathing sent jolts of fear through her, and she realized just how perilous his condition was. On unsteady feet, she rose to check on him. He squeezed her hand, trying to smile. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "I wish I could be stronger for you. I wanted to be there when my grandchild is born." A sob choked Rebecca's throat, and she knelt beside the recliner, pressing her cheek to his hand. "Don't say that, Dad. You will be there. We'll get you the best care. I'll figure something out." Yet, the stark truth settled in her heart. Her father's time might be running out. The next day passed in a blur of doctors' visits, medication schedules, and quiet worry. In a desperate move, Rebecca contacted Andrew, hoping he might just this once step up and offer help for her father's medical bills. After all, he had once promised to treat her parents like his own. But the phone rang endlessly, unanswered. When she finally got through, he brushed her off with cold indifference. "That's not my responsibility," he said flatly. "I've got my own problems." Her anger flared. "You're my husband, Andrew, or have you forgotten? My father is your family too." Andrew scoffed. "We both know that's on paper only. Don't call me about this again." The line went dead. Rebecca clutched the phone, tears stinging. She felt a familiar bitterness, the same helpless fury that had plagued her since he sold their home. But this time, she also felt a rising determination. She would find a way to help her parents, even if it meant turning to others for assistance. The question was, who else could she rely on, if not Andrew? With her savings nearly depleted and her father's condition growing dire, she needed more than a simple paycheck. And she realized, with a start, that Nicholas Walker's kindness might be the key to saving not just her father, but her entire future. Night settled over Lilac Grove, and Rebecca sat in her childhood bedroom, staring at her father's mounting hospital bills. Jonathan's condition had stabilized but remained fragile, and she was running out of funds. With trembling fingers, she dialed Nicholas Walker, barely expecting him to pick up so late. he answered on the second ring. "Rebecca, what's wrong?" She explained her father's plight, voice shaking with suppressed tears. "I wouldn't ask unless I had no other choice," she whispered. "I need help, any form of financial assistance. I promise to repay." Nicholas cut her off gently. "We have an emergency support program for employees. I'll make the arrangements. Don't worry." Relief washed over her, so powerful it nearly stole her breath. Over the next few days, hospital fees were covered and new treatment options opened up. To Rebecca's astonishment, Nicholas even arrived in Lilac Grove unannounced, bearing supplies for her and a respectful kindness for her parents. Standing on the clinic's front steps, Rebecca thanked him, tears glinting in her eyes. "You saved my family," she said, voice choked with gratitude. Nicholas only shook his head. "No, I helped a friend. Focus on your father's recovery and take care of yourself." In that moment, Rebecca realized she was no longer alone and that unexpected kindness could truly change everything. Chapter 12, Reckoning and Redemption, shorter version. Rebecca stood in her parents' small living room, steeling herself as she examined the divorce papers spread across the table. She was finally taking the first real step to free herself from Andrew West. Though her father's health remained precarious, she took comfort in knowing she had familial love and a glimmer of hope for the future. A knock at the door jarred her. She opened it to find Andrew, disheveled and angry, his once confident bearing now replaced by desperation. Without waiting for an invitation, he pushed past her into the house. His gaze swept over the stacked documents and he sneered. "So you're actually going through with this?" he demanded, picking up one of the papers. "Did you think I'd let you just walk away with my money and my child?" Rebecca lifted her chin, her voice calm. "You gave me no choice. You sold our house, refused to help my father, and left me alone in a cheap hotel. This marriage is over." Andrew's eyes flashed. "You won't see a dime. And don't forget I'm still the father of that baby." His tone bristled with threat. "I'll fight you every step of the way." She clutched her pregnant belly protectively. "If you want to be in this child's life, prove you can act like a father. Otherwise, the courts will hear how you abandoned me when I needed you most." Silence stretched, broken only by the low hiss of her father's oxygen machine in the adjoining room. With a final glare, Andrew stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Rebecca stood there, trembling, tears pooling in her eyes. Her mother appeared from the kitchen, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing," Margaret whispered. "He won't change, no matter what he promises." Rebecca exhaled slowly and nodded. The woman she had once been naive and hopeful was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, forged by heartbreak and responsible now for a child who deserved a stable, loving life. Glancing at her father's frail form in the next room, she resolved to press on with the divorce and claim the peace she and her unborn baby needed. It was time to bury the lies of her past and reach for the future she'd begun to glimpse through her new job and the surprising kindness of Nicholas Walker. One thing was certain: Andrew West would no longer control her destiny. Weeks later, the final pieces fell into place. Jonathan's health stabilized enough for him to join a cardiac rehab program that greatly improved his prognosis. Margaret, relieved beyond measure, returned to baking pies for the local diner and humming old tunes in the kitchen. The once gloomy bungalow felt bright again, filled with gentle hope and renewed purpose. As for Andrew West, he faced a wave of lawsuits from disgruntled investors, along with the divorce proceedings initiated by Rebecca's legal team. Whispers suggested he might file for bankruptcy, his empire reduced to dust, yet Rebecca refused to dwell on his downfall. She had spent enough tears and anguish on a man who had shown neither remorse nor compassion when she needed him most. Her focus now was on the baby due any day and on her role at Walker Global Innovations. Nicholas Walker's unwavering support had inspired her to push herself, and she quickly rose from administrative assistant to a specialized project coordinator for philanthropic events. Under Nicholas's mentorship, she discovered talents she never knew she had, negotiating sponsorships, marketing campaign strategies, and forging partnerships across diverse communities. One crisp autumn morning, while Rebecca was in the office finalizing details for a charity gala, she felt a sharp twinge in her abdomen. Instinctively, she recognized what it was. Her baby was ready to meet the world. Caroline and several colleagues rushed her to the hospital, calling Nicholas along the way. In a flurry of excitement and nerves, Rebecca was admitted, her heart pounding with both fear and profound joy. Hours later, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Ava Grace West, who let out a lusty cry the moment she entered the world. Cradling her newborn in her arms, Rebecca felt an overwhelming surge of love. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered promises of protection and devotion, vowing never to let Ava experience the pain and betrayal she had faced. To her surprise, Nicholas appeared at the hospital soon after, carrying an enormous bouquet of flowers. His demeanor was composed, yet his eyes flickered with genuine happiness for her. He offered a soft congratulations, gently taking the newborn's tiny hand in his own. In that tender moment, Rebecca sensed a change in the air, like a new door opening. The connection she felt with Nicholas was more than gratitude. It was respect, admiration, and a blossoming affection neither dared fully voice yet. But the path ahead was theirs to carve, step by measured step. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey where betrayal and heartbreak gave way to hope and redemption. Rebecca's story reminds us that even in our darkest hours, resilience and kindness can guide us to new beginnings. She stood up for herself, protected her unborn child, and found unexpected allies who believed in her worth. And in the end, the heart that was once shattered found the courage to love again. If Rebecca's story of overcoming obstacles, fighting for family, and discovering genuine support has moved you, please remember to like this video, share it with someone who might need a reminder that hope can be found in the most unlikely places, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of triumph against all odds. Your engagement helps us keep creating content that speaks to the power of resilience and the beauty of second chances.